Okay, let's go ahead and get started. How's everybody doing today? Did you have fun? Okay, I'm going to be honest, that was a little weak. Let's try this one more time because I think you guys got decaf all day rather than regular coffee. Did you guys have fun today? Are you very happy with the Red Hat's Agile day? Yes. Okay, good. Oh wait, the Red Hat people are able to clap. A little clap for them. Thank you for this today. Woo! I won't shout. That'll probably bust out your eardrum. So my name is Laura Valentine, and I'm here today to talk to you about almost Agile. Signs your team may be faking it. How many people here are Scrum Masters or Scrum Masters to be? Okay. How many are more Agile coach track? Okay, a little bit more. How many people just wandered in off the street? They have no idea why they're here. Okay, we got a couple. So what I want to talk about, this is what we're going to do together today. So my goal is to share my story on a little bit when I was a developer, but also now that I'm into a Scrum Master, on things that I see with my teams when they're about to go off the rails or they were never on the rails to begin with. Take what you can from it. If there's something you don't like, don't worry about it. Some of the core assumptions in my presentation is that you guys have a basic knowledge of Agile and Scrum, or you're willing to sit there and look thoughtful the whole time. Number two, everybody has good intentions in this presentation. So if I'm sure there's a lot that can be said on people who are actively sabotaging anti-Agile, really not a good fit for your team. This one assumes, this presentation, that no matter what direction people go in, no matter what interpretation they have, at the end of the day, they want to succeed. They want the team to succeed. That you have support from management to some degree, that you're not in a waterfall or tiny group and suddenly deciding to go Agile, and that even if it's lip service, management is behind you. Also, and lastly, there's a broad cast of characters. So even if you know me or my team personally right now, this covers a wide range of time and people. So just because I'm standing over you, pointing directly at you, going like this, I'm not talking about you specifically. Any questions? You all look very thoughtful. So where did my journey start? I've done the Agile transformation 2-ish times, depending on how you count it. Round one went from Waterfall to Agile. How many people here have ever know what Waterfall is? Okay. How many people here have worked in Waterfall? Okay, then you know this particular variation basically took the worst of Waterfall, the most challenging part of Agile, and smushed it together. You'll hear a little bit more about it later, but it was a pretty bad experience for me. Kind of turned me off a little bit. So that when we came to round two, I was a little hesitant, but our whole department kind of cut over, and this is where I became a Scrum Master as part of this organization. In fact, in round two, was where I was tricked into becoming a Scrum Master. Originally, I was a developer. We needed a Scrum Master. They asked me, I said, no, I don't want to be doing 2 jobs at the same time. So then they said, we've hired a Scrum Master. They're going to be here in 2 weeks, but there's a gap. Can you cover? I said, sure. How hard can it be? Then they said, wait a minute. His son has broken his leg. He needs 1 more week to figure out what he's going to do. Can you do it for 3 weeks? I said, sure. After 3 weeks, they said, he's not coming. My team, unbeknownst to me, voted unanimously to keep me as Scrum Master. And at that point, I'd fallen in love with the role. So that's where I started to become a Scrum Master. And round 3, the most recent one, was a much larger conversion where most of us were already in Agile, but the whole department went to Agile. And this is where my love of Agile and Scrum Master started. So my perspective, this presentation is going to be from a Scrum Master point of view, although I've dealt with a lot of other roles. It's going to be on Scrum, so some of it may be more pertinent to people with Scrum, especially if you're doing like Kanban or something else. Take what you want from it. And then I'm an active Scrum Master, so it's an ongoing journey. Some days are up, some days are down. As a general rule, we're trending upward. So first I'm going to touch on very lightly, because this presentation isn't about transitions, but some of the really beginning signs that you're not on the right path, especially on the cutover. So this presentation, I'm going to go over the signs, and then I'm going to go over ways that I've used to course correct that have worked for me. So the first one is meaning mapping. where you start in Waterfall or you start with meetings and map them to Scrum ceremonies. You talk a lot in your status meetings. They're 3 days a week. Let's make them 5 days a week and call them stand-ups. They're 45 minutes, but that'll work. Over here, your presentations go on and on and on planning. You're the sprint planner once a week. And you in the back have a lot of energy and emotion in yours. Retro, we're good to go. The next area is when you do selective adoption. We're not going to take everything from Agile or Scrum. We're just going to take the things that fit our culture and leave everything else aside. And in terms of roles, it's not that any one role doesn't fit, but they tend to slide certain roles into things whether or not a person would be a good fit as a Scrum Master. Project managers often switch over, or product owners that are dedicated-ish. They may have several products. They may have several teams. They may have a second job. So what can you do about it? I should say, what have I done about it? First of all, ban meeting mapping. Acknowledge the change. This is a big deal. How many people have done a Waterfall to Agile jump? Okay, one person. Oh, several of you. Acknowledge the change and make sure you start a new set of meetings. This way you can control what time they happen, how often they happen, who's invited formally to those meetings, and avoid selective adoption. As you get better, you can do what you want with it. The whole thing is about change, but at the beginning, aim for core Scrum ceremonies. No more, no less. Wait to make it your own. Those singers. Sorry, like singers that take a song and continue to make it their own. I just want to hear jingle bells. That's all I want. Embrace the new roles and names. Sometimes what you need is Agile training and certification. Even if people are brand new to it, they can get higher certification after that, but they come into it with the same level playing field. They're not coming into it with preconceived notions because they read something on a website somewhere. It was very simple. They ran the whole thing top to bottom. They know what they're doing. And even after that, training and certification needs to come from your company, meaning like somebody needs to pay for it, so it might not be an option. But focus on working agreements. I found this to be very effective. What can you expect from me as a Scrum Master? What can I expect from you as a product owner? What can the team expect from all of us? Even if you guys disagree, at least you will be on the same page. And one of the hardest things for me when we cut over was team names and the way they're not associated with a specific product or a specific team or a specific role. In fact, when I did the cutover, I was a little bit more senior, mature. So I'd been through a couple things, and I knew what professionalism was. And professionalism wasn't walking into the meeting and saying, "Hi, I'm from Guardians of the Scrum." That was really difficult for me. And in fact, we ended up changing our names to Masterminds, but it took me a while to get used to the more informal nature of Agile. So charting the course, one of the first things I got, an actual quote from my product owner at the time is, "On changing direction at any time, any day, right this second, isn't that why we went to Agile in the first place? So I could change my mind." This, of course, leads to scope creep or an avalanche, and people struggle with project deadlines with hard dates. How many people here get hard dates for projects all the time? Okay, quite a few. How many people feel they successfully deal with those hard dates? Okay. Couple hand waves like this. I'm not sure. That's when somebody tries in sizing to be like with fingers, and they're like, "Okay, what size?" And somebody goes. I've seen that a couple times. One time, I got this. I can't even do it. I'm like, "You cannot use the Spock symbol. It's really a rule on my team. You cannot use the Spock symbol to make your Scrum Master guess whether you're putting up a 5 or a 3. So some of the ways that I've course corrected for direction changes and scope creep, one is prevention. So focus on tangible story outcomes and artifacts. I work on a team that focuses on capabilities, so APIs. It's a little harder to have concrete outcomes because you're looking at a UI, but make sure that it has something specific, a specific question or a specific outcome that the team's expecting. So this limits ambiguity. It makes it a lot harder for scope creep to happen, at least without you knowing about it, if everything's less ambiguous. Number 2, mitigation. So if something has to come in, take an equivalent story out. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you get a request from the owner of the company to make a change in your system, although it's not a request, and it has to be taken in, or at least everybody decides it. The other thing is limit work in progress. If you have 5 stories and all 5 stories are in progress at the same time, it makes it very difficult to take one out, especially if all of them are past the point of no return. If you have the team working on 1, 2, or 3 at one time, then at least that leaves you 2 stories that you can pull out. And number 3, for some reason this works really well with me dealing with project deadlines. You can give me a date. I can work with it. I'm going to tell you one of 2 things. Either the scope of the stories that my team can get done by that specific date. That way you can go back and find other teams, other resources, or people who can work on the rest of the scope. Or I can tell you the number of sprints needed to complete that epic. It's your choice. I'm not saying this makes people happy. I'm just saying it seems to resonate with them and give them options to go back to the other people that are impacted by them. Team dynamics. So your team members are 100% allocated to your project, which is good. Except for secret projects, prod support, a book tour nobody told you about, and they're a full stack team, which is even better, except that they queue the tasks by role. Watch out for the mini waterfall. Has anybody experienced the mini waterfall? I see a lot of heads nodding. So you're doing it, you got a sprint, you're going 2 weeks, 1 week, 3 weeks at a time, but all it is little tiny waterfalls where the analysts hand off to the developers hand off to the coders. What can you do? So for 100% allocation, have an honest conversation with the people, with any managers, with yourself, because somebody's confused. It might be you, it might be the people on your team, it might be one of the managers. But the idea is to get everybody on the exact same page on how much time this person has on your team, and you can adjust from there. Not only is it more fair to the people on your team, but it also gives them the ability to push back if somebody comes in and talks to them about doing more work. Number 2, the working agreements that I talked about. So once you know how much that can be expected, like how much time is allocated, then you can go in and set expectations. What can I expect from you? What can you expect from me? And no secret projects. I hate secret projects. And this actually goes back to when I was a developer, when you were working 80 hours, but only getting credit for 40 hours. And you were having to individually decide what you worked on and what you didn't work on. Tell my team on a regular basis, if it's not on our board, you shouldn't be working on it. Now, that's not to say that what they're working on is not important, but if it's important enough, then it should be on the board so that the rest of the team can work on it as well, so that they can support you, so that the product owner can prioritize the work that you're doing. Full stack is good as long as you don't create queues. I had one team that I started with that for some reason I'd never seen anything like it before. We went into sprint planning, we did all the tasking, it's great. And they went ahead and assigned every single task in the entire sprint on day 1. I'd never seen anything like it. So number 1 thing we did, everything goes back to unassigned. Nothing goes into a queue. If you're not actively working on it, it should be set in unassigned. It kind of freaked them out a little bit, but we worked through it. And in that way, you can try to challenge the team to try different tasks. One way you can help this is, again, to limit the, okay, there's a ladder flying by outside, to limit the work in progress so that the team itself is focused on single stories and nobody's working ahead just on all the coding and the analyst is working ahead. You may also need to address the fear of failure. Wonder why people aren't picking up other tasks. Are they concerned that they don't know how to do it? Are they concerned that that's not their role? Some people on the team, especially senior people, have a strong sense that they're responsible for the entire team. If the team succeeds or if the team fails, it's on them, it reflects on them, and it's also their responsibility. So one thing you want to do is emphasize the team aspect of it. The team succeeds or the team fails as a team. It's not all on one person. And the other thing you can do is step up and lead by example. So we'll give you an example. If you can see the little Tyrannosaurus Rex, $3 at Target, My team has this as a little internal team award. For some reason, everybody wants to get this. There's no real rules around it. What it is whoever has the award at the time can give it to someone else for positive reasons, for what they see as something beneficial that's been done. So my team struggles in deciding in backlog refinement sizes 2 and 3. We use the Fibonacci series. We have huge debates whether something's a 2 or something's a 3. 2.15, 2.75. Are we leaning left? Are we leaning right? If one half the team is a 3, then the other half will be a 2. We'll have a discussion and they'll flip. So I'm good. I've been doing this a while. I'm solving this problem. Anybody have an idea how I solved the problem? I took away their 2s. I took all of them and I hit them. They could have a choice. They could pick 1, they could pick 3, or they could pick 5. And I'm like, I'm getting that dinosaur. On top of that, I bet they're going to go home and talk about how great I am. I'm a really good Scrum Master. And they're going to tell everybody that I did such a good job solving this problem that nobody could solve. I was right on one aspect. They do still talk about it to this day. But they talk about it in capital letters. The day she tried to take her 2s. We went into the meeting, I kid you not. They looked at their cards, sometimes we're online. It was chaos. Some people were holding up 20s and covering the 0. Some people were holding up 2 1s. The people that had their 1s stolen were holding up their fingers. The only success I can take from that day is that they were 100% united in getting back their 2s. I tell you this as a sign of stepping up and leading by example and addressing fears of failure. I did not get that dinosaur, by the way. Which leads to communication. Communication is key. Back when I was talking about Agile, I'm not sure if I trademarked that, but where it was Waterfall and Agile smushed together, they put the emphasis, translation of communication, on meeting. The theory was meet early, meet often, repeat. During that time frame from a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. period, I had 14 meetings. And at one point, I was quadruple booked. 2 meetings I was running and 2 meetings that I was a subject matter expert in. I managed to go to all 4 meetings, and they all ended successfully. I think that was a positive, but for me, it was a sign that something was not right. Along with daily status stand-ups. If they're 45 minutes, they're too long. If someone starts with 2nd grade, moving their way up to today, there's a big problem. If you see anybody folding their arms and leaning back, that's not a good sign. And if anybody's feet goes up on anything, you're in trouble. So how have I dealt with this in the past? For the formal meeting overload, too many meetings. It's simple, but for some reason really resonated with me. What if you skipped it? Just because somebody invites you to a meeting doesn't mean you have to go, especially if they have no goals and no expected outcomes. This is fine, that really helped me, but for my team, sometimes you have to help them make the break. I got one team that had a lot of subject matter experts on it, and they were interrupted constantly with people who just wanted 5 minutes. How many people here think 5 minutes means 5 minutes? Yeah, no hands. That would be 15 minutes, that would be 20 minutes, even that's fine. 30 minutes to help out another team member. But when you have 8 to 10 people interrupting you all day long, they can't get anything done. So that's where it comes to bullet number 3, send them to me. Blame me. It got to the point that I would switch seats with people so that people had to walk by me to get to the subject matter experts. I was putting whiteboards, Sachin remembers this, I was putting whiteboards around people. If you approached my team, you needed to have a reason for it, and it had to be a good one. In addition, I told them, if people are inviting you to things or you want me to step in, CC me on email. Send me the invites. So if I got something out of the blue, really strange, but it was from one of these subject matter experts, I knew without talking to them that they wanted me to step in, whether they wanted me to take over, just be in there, help give them their voice. For the daily stand-ups, literally stand up. Now for people who have kind of never done anything else, meaning like, Waterfall, have always been an Agile, this may seem kind of simple, literally called the stand-up. But for other people, especially if you did that meeting mapping where you came from another meeting, you get people that sit there, they're bigger than you, or they're more senior than you, they're not going anywhere. So what I've done in the past, take the chairs. I'm not sure why, I take a lot of things. Completely take the chairs out of the room. I've yet to have somebody sit on the floor. So even if you're not there, even if you're co-located or not co-located, meaning somebody's in India or somebody's in another time zone, enlist other Scrum Masters, get other people to help you. I 100% will take someone else's team's chairs. I will jump out of a closet if you need your team scared straight. I'm willing to do that. And the other thing I found is leverage a parking lot for call-outs. So this is just something, whether it's online or on a board, where if you want to defer a topic, you can write it down. A lot of people, I think, feel like if they don't get it out now, if I don't say this information now, nobody's going to hear me. But if you put it on a parking lot where they can see their topic and they can go back to it, or it can be talked about in a different session, people are much more willing to end their meetings on the 15-minute mark. How many people believe that in Agile, everyone has an equal voice? Okay, I got 5 people over here. No, okay, a little bit here. How many people find that everyone has an equal voice on their teams? As long as they don't disagree with Ted, they can talk the loudest and they have the most seniority. Definitely a couple over here. So what have I done about it? What can you do about it? A couple of things. Internally, assume good intentions and wonder why. This is really important, that maybe somebody really feels like they have something to say, or there's another reason why they're doing it. You need to start from a good place before you start from a negative place. Work on the prep work. Engage the individuals to support the whole team. If someone constantly speaks over people, talk to them. Ask them to help you engage other people on the team. If someone isn't speaking up, talk to them. Ask them why. What is causing something that maybe they're not speaking up? Engage them to have an action item to speak up in the next meeting, and provide positive feedback and support the second you see people trying. The more you support people and highlight what's good, the more they're willing to support you. That's what I found. And in the meeting, just make sure that you provide space for everybody to give people the floor. So whether you're queuing, okay, first you, then you, then you. I've seen people use dolls, no T-Rex for some reason, but can't speak unless you have that particular object. There's lots of different techniques out there for making space. And similar here, use a parking lot, so even if someone doesn't get their topic talked about, they're not afraid that it's lost. Who doesn't love tasking? Okay, take it that everybody does. I will tell a secret that I'm not sure even the people from my company here know. One of my nicknames on my prior team was the Taskmaster. I don't know why, I like it, and it's not the creating of the task, that's okay. But it's something about seeing the team working together on these tasks as they break things down that really gets everything going. So, some of my favorites of what I've heard. Everybody knows what to do. So tasks or tasking is a waste of time. Oh yeah, that task is done, so you can go ahead and close it. And for some reason, that phrase always starts with, oh yeah. Assign the task to my queue. I reassigned it to him for completion. I don't know how to do that, but you're so much better at it. That's her story, not mine, and that's not my role. How many people have heard at least one of these? How many people have heard at least 3 of these? How many people have heard all 8 of these? Okay. So, this is how I handle things, if any of it's helpful to you. On the task creation where everybody knows what to do, usually I find that there's one senior person saying that, and when I say senior, I'm not saying like a particular title or a particular role. It's more someone who has experience and or is comfortable on the team. But it's a senior person saying this right next to a junior person with big googly eyes staring at me. In order to get around this, because I suspect that everyone does not know what to do, take a poll of the rest of the team. But it's important to ask the right question. And the reason I say this, I had a boss once who always said no. Didn't matter what you asked him, he said no, especially around vacation. Can I have Tuesday off? No. Can I have Thursday off? No. Can I have next Friday off? No. But he literally said no, no matter what. So if I said, do you have any concerns if I take Tuesday off? He would say no. Swear to God. So I got to realize I just had to change how I'm asking the question. And in this case, you need to make the taking action the one about knowing what to do, and the inaction meaning that you don't know what to do. So for example, instead of saying who doesn't know what to do, meaning someone who's unsure has to raise their hand, you should say who does know what to do. So the action is on the up. That really highlights, at least to the rest of the team, that maybe there's a slim chance that not everybody knows what to do. You can also emphasize that it's more about the discussion. Whether you create a task or not is not really the issue. It's about the team discussing what needs to be done so that everybody's on the same page. For task management, that task is done. Or is it? Anytime somebody says, you can go ahead and close that task, it's usually in stand-up. If I say no, and I never do, sometimes I create a task. Every once in a while, I'll move it into progress while we're having the discussion in the daily stand-up, but I never, ever, never close a task, and my team knows this. That task will sit there until the end of sprint, until the end of time, until they close it. Because what I found is while they'll tell me to close a task or someone else, if you ask them to do it, they'll suddenly be like, well, it's not quite done. I still have one more thing to do. I'm just waiting on one more thing. Closing tasks are never actually closed. And there's also a rule on my team, or maybe not a rule, but something I enforce. No assigning tasks to anyone else on the team. Part of this comes from the fact that the same team that assigned all the tasks in the story had this really strange thing. We had two sites, two time zones, one in India, one here, but each team had a counterpart. So there was devs and testers in India and devs and testers here. So person A on one side of the world would pick up a task and not get to it. It was legitimate, they didn't get to it. So in their report the next morning, they would say, I didn't get to this task. I assigned this to person B for completion. I am done. Person B now has this in their queue, they didn't pick it up, they don't get to it. Maybe a prod issue came up, maybe something else happened. So at the end of the next day, they'd be like, I did not get to this. I've assigned this to person A for completion. And it took me a little bit, but I started to see this weird cycle where these tasks would just go back and forth between two people, and each person was getting madder and madder that the other person was not doing the work that was assigned to them. And it got to the point that they were starting to fight badly. So once I noticed that, nipped that in the bud, anything that you don't finish at the end of the day that you want someone else to pick up goes to unassigned. If you feel that somebody else is not carrying their weight, at least initially, teams should talk, but at least initially, talk to me. I'll talk to that person. Don't worry about what they're doing. Worry about what you're doing. Miraculously, this at least fixed everything from that perspective. Squads and teams are kind of like family. You're going to fight no matter what. But in this case, it completely took away the issue that someone else was not doing the work I assigned to them. And along those lines, stories are owned by the team. Now, this might not be the case for like Kanban or how you guys do it, but for a task story, the story itself is owned by the whole team. So in my case, either we leave it unassigned, we assign it to the squad leader product owner, or if no one else is available, assign it to me. I will take every single story, because what I found people were running into is the either senior or just stronger voices on the team would take the good stories, the stories they liked, and then no one else would touch them. And the people, we had a bad story. I shouldn't say bad, all stories are good stories. But a story that was all about prod support, repetitive, nobody wanted to do it, it would go to the weaker or quieter member of the team. And then nobody touched it because, oh, no, that's not my story. Yeah, nip that in the bud too. As soon as stories were assigned to like the product owner, then everybody felt comfortable picking up tasks. Nobody felt like there was somebody that was a gatekeeper on these particular tasks. So these were how I handled these particular categories. Any questions? Yes. So how do you avoid the developers stepping on each other's toes? How many people think that's a Scrum Master's responsibility? So my question would be that that's for them to work out. So maybe the tasks need to be sliced in a different way. So I'm not saying that, they're not stepping on each other's toes, but I would facilitate the discussion to figure out how we can slice these tasks or break them up or combine them so that they're not. Maybe they do need to be working on separate pieces of code. That's how I would handle it. Facilitate the discussion. You're not the one that's going to be the one to decide it. That's for the team to decide how something gets done. I guess unless you're nipping in the bud and then I'm bossy. Yes?
So I'm curious to know what your logic is for forcing people to literally stand up during the stand-up. What's the benefit?
So one of the main reasons, so it is a stand-up, and that part of the Agile thing is that you're supposed to stand, but a lot of it is just to keep it short. So it's a lot harder, I can tell you right now, to stand up and talk for long periods of time. The idea is you're just getting together for 15 minutes, and then, you know, whether you're pair programming, it's not that you're separating, but it's not supposed to be a long ceremony. So to be honest, if your team can sit and do this and not turn it into a status meeting, there's nothing wrong with sitting. It's just to make it a much more effective, quick, concise meeting, because you meet daily. You're going to have another one the next day. To be honest, I don't need to know what started in second grade and move forward. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'll pause for more questions later, but we'll keep moving right now. Good questions. Thank you for speaking up. Because the other thing is mindset. If someone tells you that's not my role, I don't know how to do it. First of all, wonder why. Is it a fear of failure? Are they concerned about being typecast? If I pick up one analyst task, then I will have to do all the analyst tasks. Or just a lack of interest. I don't want to do that. That's boring, repetitive, hard. Once you know why someone has some concerns, you can start to address it. And one of the ways to address it is to clarify expectations. What does task ownership mean? Now, it can mean different things to different people, but on my team, it means that you're taking responsibility for getting that task complete. If you want to take your lunch money and pay the person next to you to do it, that's up to you. All it means is that you're going to make sure it gets done. So you can pair program, you can shadow, you can ask someone else for assistance, you can find another person to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to know how to do something 100% to pick it up. Also, when you're talking to people, focus on growth and supporting the team to avoid a single point of failure. If you can't install because somebody's on vacation, that's a problem. If you can't finish something because the analyst isn't here, or the scrum master's not here, or the coder's not here, that's a problem. Challenge the team to innovate, especially if it's repetitive tasks that they hate. Turn it into something fun, like something that they can code to get rid of something that they hate to do. And have an honest conversation. On my team, we focus on areas of expertise. I expect you to bring your best every day, and I expect you to bring what you know, but there are no specialists on my team. There's nobody that just pushes that blue button. And there's nobody that just does architecture or just does analysis. I expect everybody to work on the stories to get them done, no matter what needs to get done. Practice makes perfect. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So a question on that.
Yeah.
You have hardcore team of developers and BA QA people on the team.
Yeah.
How do you expect a BA QA person to write C, C++ code?
So maybe they start, so we actually, in our group, we do have analysts that do coding. So maybe they're not doing the hardcore coding, but I do expect that they might try. I do expect the developers to test and do some analysis if they're available and that's what they have to do. The expectation is that you will help and you will do what you can. And if you can only do a little bit right now, focus on the growth. So maybe you can do a little bit more. So for example, on us, we have it's not the same as coding, but we have test scripts. We have other things that people can do to dip their toe into that coding. There are no specialists.
Just make everybody a developer?
Or
at the end of the day?
You can have
everybody to a BA, and that may not be the interest of there at all.
Well, so actually, you set that up very nicely. If you're good for the next one, have an honest conversation, because sometimes it's about what your future goals are and where you want to be. So maybe you do want to be an architect on a targeted team and you're not a good fit for an Agile team. That's not to say that you can't add to it, but you need to know that you're on an Agile team and that you're focused on, as a team, getting something done, not as a superstar off on your own creating artificial intelligence, something like that. Yeah. We can come back to it. There's definitely room for debate. Yes, we'll do a little bit more at the end. Because the other thing around those is where practice makes perfect is one of my favorite ones, because if you tell me, I don't know how to do this, you're much better at it than me, then what do you think my response is going to be? I don't need the practice. You clearly do. So you can keep doing that task until you feel you've gotten it right. Usually it only takes a time or two for people to feel that they've gotten it right. And we already talked about the future goals, kind of how does this team work and how do we fit together to get stories done. 100% people have areas of expertise, but they should be helping other people on the team to learn and to grow so that it doesn't matter if one person is out. You're not going to completely stop the work that you're doing. Okay. And sometimes, even though we're in Agile, we get pulled back to Waterfall. And some of this could be you're actually working with a Waterfall team. Not everybody in my company is cut over to Agile at this time. So some of the signs that you're getting pulled backwards is actually the use of Waterfall. If you're getting anything labeled BRD, SDS, or TSD, who knows what these are? Who will admit to knowing what these are? Yeah, these are documents, outputs as part of the Waterfall process. If you're getting detailed plans covering months to years that have set dates, especially requests for set scope and set dates, these are signs that you're getting pulled back into Waterfall. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to do it. So how have I handled this in the past? One thing you want to do, you're not going to get people to cut over right away, especially for Waterfall. There's a lot of concern. And maybe you guys have had better luck than I am, but everybody is concerned that the work's not going to get done. They know how to get it done now. They don't want to make any changes. But if you can highlight the strengths of Agile as you're working with them, focus on working software, on customer collaboration, and responding to change. The first time you tell somebody in Waterfall that they don't have to enter a change control because something's different, their head's going to like go crazy. They have to enter change controls for anything. What you're doing is working from the inside to show them the benefits of Agile. And this last one is strange, but I swear it works. Leverage the Agile concepts, but avoid the Agile term. If you say, let's set up a daily stand-up, whoa, we work Waterfall. Let's not get into this new agey weirdo stuff here. But if you say, let's just do a 15-minute checkpoint, like every day, we can kind of say what we've done, what we haven't done, really, really quick. People tend to agree. And then if like, you know what if we had like, I don't know, like a review or something? I can show you what I've done, you can show me what you're done, like every 3 weeks. You know, what do you think? And like say once we've had the review, we kind of like plan for the next couple weeks and just, you know, we can just get together and make sure we're all on the same page. People actually follow willingly along. They actually like that idea as long as you don't use the Agile terms. And the whole idea is as you're working with people in Waterfall or a different methodology, that you're building trust. And as you continue to build trust and they see that you're actually getting the work done, that they can rely on you, that you're dependable, they're willing to cut you more slack and open their minds a little bit more to Agile. And trust leads me to the next thing. Who's heard of Project Aristotle? Okay, see a couple people raising their hand. This is a study done by Google. I just found it very interesting. And they studied what makes a team high performing. What's the number one sign or factor that indicates a team will be high performing? Who knows? Okay, you can just shout it out. For those of you who said psychological safety, you are correct. For those of you who had said something else, you are incorrect. So the number one sign in predicting whether a team is high performing, and there's a lot of other factors, is the answer to this question. Can we take risks on this team without feeling insecure or embarrassed? So what it means is who on a team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. This is crazy when you think about it, how much time people spend putting together skill sets on a team, whether somebody's senior or junior, kind of putting these teams together when it really comes down to trust. So what can you do for psychological safety? Because you can't trick someone into trusting you. You can't demand that someone feel safe with you. You will feel safe with me. The only thing I can tell you is what has worked for me in the past. Lead by example. So practice what you preach. If you're asking someone to trust you, then you have to trust them. If you're asking someone to respect you, then you need to be respectful of them. If you want someone to be vulnerable and talk about their failures, then you need to share your failures with them and push your comfort zone exactly as you're asking the team to push theirs. I had 2 managers, not at the same time, but one of the most memorable things I have about them is we had some late night installs, and they would be on those installs. They didn't have any action items. They didn't have anything to do as part of the install itself, but they were there. And some of these ran from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Like, they were long installs, and I'll never forget basically how I felt when I was on there at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to do an install and someone was there. Now, I'm not recommending that anybody work 24/7, because the other thing you need to teach your teams is how to balance their workload. Work-life balance, I personally feel, is also very important. And you need to be able to provide and expect to get authentic feedback from the team. So I've recently been introduced to the SBI model. Does anybody know that? Okay, a couple of people nodding. Situation, behavior, and impact. I've been practicing that with my team. But basically, the essence of it is you want to give feedback that they can have based on a situation, what you noticed in that situation, the behavior you observed, and how it made you feel. I had this one time, I was more junior, and somebody had done a good job on the team that I was working on, and they happened to be more senior. So I sent them emoticons, smiley face, thumbs up, rainbow. They did a good job. They were insulted. They were not happy with the feedback that I had given them because they thought it was frivolous. You want to make sure, especially depending on who you're giving the feedback to, that you're respectful of how they expect to hear it, but also that you're getting feedback from them, And you want to stand by your team. Mistakes are going to happen. I had one time where I was working with a team in India as well as somebody else. I'll call them person C. So person C had talked to the team, what they needed done, and I also needed something done, but it should just take 30 minutes. So I didn't think it was a big deal that I had asked them to do something. The only thing was they worked on my project all night long and for a couple of days, and not the project for person C. So when it came time to talk about it, person C was completely blindsided. That none of their work was complete. And the team said, well, we worked on this other thing. So they kind of got yelled at for doing that. But I stepped up and said, you know what? I didn't think it was a big deal. I just said, hey, that was my bad. I had directed them to work on this other thing. I didn't think it was a big deal, but obviously it took more time than needed. I was friends with person C. I didn't see this as a huge impact. But later on, the India team reached out to me. And they said that it was very important to them, that they were supremely impressed that I had stepped up and defended them. They thought that was very important. So these are my suggestions for you. I can't say that they'll work. All I can tell you is that they have worked for me in the past, because I've been lucky enough to work on some really good teams that have, unbeknownst to me, when you hear things like I'm calling in from a funeral, I've had people work with broken hands and broken legs. I did not make them, nor did I break them. Yeah. When you're talking to somebody in a meeting, maybe in a stand-up, and you hear the fire alarm going off in the background, and I've literally had to say, if your life is in danger, you can leave. Because they're willing to stay. Someone asked me at the end of a different meeting, if you're done, I need to go if it's okay with you because a cyclone is about to hit. Yeah, that was definitely go. And basically, whatever, I won't guarantee it, but whatever you're willing to give to the team is what they will give back. I had a really powerful experience once. We were on an install, and somebody called me and said, I have to go. I hope I get through this, but my son is having difficulty breathing. We have to take him to the emergency room, but I will call you back from there. My response to them, hopefully, was the same. If you call me back, I'm hanging up on you. They didn't call me back, which is good. Their son is fine. People's legs mended and arms mended. I had nothing to do with that. But basically, that tells me that the psychological safety that my teams feel are pretty powerful, and I feel pretty committed to them. So even though we spend a lot of time focusing on ways that your teams may be faking it, what I would encourage you to do most is focus on signs that your team is not faking it. that your team is hitting the mark, that they're trying their best. These are some of my current teammates as well as some prior teammates. These are the most important things you need to find that opportunity to give them positive feedback, and that will gain momentum for you. And I will say, the team I have right now I love. They're improving in leaps and bounds. They're doing a really great job. But every time we have backlog refinement, they still look for those twos. So with that, Agile wrap up. Agile takes a minute or two to learn or a lifetime to master. What questions do you guys have? Yes.
This actually gets to your point about moving the twos. So when you have to, and I asked this question earlier to someone else, when you have that who moved my cheese moment, in this case, let's say you decide you want to introduce no estimates, which, is sort of, okay, we're going to score everything a 1. Or,
yeah.
So how might you approach that with the learning you have now from the drastic who hid my twos incident?
So I tend to prep my teams, except for stealing the twos in their chairs, for what we're trying to or what we're going to do. If I really feel it's beneficial to them, I usually approach it from a test and learn. Let's try it if you guys are willing to and see how we like it. So my team has gotten a little used to that, so they're a little bit more willing to at least try. So that's probably how I would introduce something like that if I thought it would be beneficial to how we work. Who else? Anybody? It's okay if nobody. Oh, over here.
Would you make any additional suggestions or changes to what you said if we're talking about a team that's not co-located?
Not particularly. I mean, so would I still steal their twos? Is that what you're asking me? Yes, because we have certain things that online. Right now, my team does have to be co-located, but for the long time, we've had different sites, different time zones. And it's kind of the same thing. I think just the hardest thing a little bit is getting the feedback because you're not always there to, see it face to face, like for an 8-hour day or something like that. But I do find, a lot of those comments that I made about, the fire drills and the cyclones and things like that were actually people in India. So does that help you? Right. So I would make it a little bit more of a competition because there was enough people in each site. So say we had scavenger hunts and each team had the same or similar list, and then we could do a comparison. So I would just do something similar that they could do in that time frame and then compare between the two teams or even make it challenging, like pair up the teams. So 2 in India, 2 here, 2 in India, 2 here, and they had to work together to get that done. So.
What would you say when teams are being formed because they are co-located instead of the fact that pulling the right people into the teams?
So I'll give my opinion on that, meaning I'm not sure what other people would say, but I would love the fact that it was co-located because you could take that and build a team out of it versus we've had some, like our company just went through that where they just started putting people together because they're located together. I guess, are you saying like there's no developers in there, it's 100% business, or it's? So I would address that more from like a product owner or manager level, like not have it be the team's issue. I think you could still have them co-locate, like why is the work, I would ask the question, why is the work not being filtered through more equitably, or what can we give them that's just as much, a chunk of work to work on independently, as this one? Is there something that's the equivalent? Did that help at all? It's I will say, so let me leave you this. We've had ones where we had split teams. So basically there was each team had people in India and people in the US, and then they took everybody in India and put them together and everybody in the US and put them together, and both teams had a higher satisfaction across the two of them. So I see it as just a matter of fixing the work that's getting assigned rather than fixing the team. You had something?
So I've kind of been stuck on the whole not assigning tasks thing.
Yep.
Because to do that puts more pressure on me. At least that's how I feel as a Scrum Master. But can I give you a scenario and maybe you tell me where I'm wrong and how I run my team? So
I won't tell you how you're wrong because there's not wrong, but I will tell you what I might do. Yeah, go ahead.
So I struggle with not assigning the task because we go over everything in the sprint together and we assign them to each other as a collaborative effort based on who probably can do the task the best. It's not me assigning it to them, it's a discussion, right? But when we're adding effort estimates to those tasks, it's really based on the person who's probably gonna do the work. So how do you assign an effort to a ticket, not necessarily knowing who's gonna do the work?
So for that one, I still think you can get like the subject matter experts to provide some insight, but I would even say it's not necessarily up to the subject matter experts, because what if it goes to someone who doesn't really know anything about it versus somebody who is skilled in it? So I would say my team doesn't do the sizing of tasks. We do the sizing of stories. But if you do that, you could still have the team weigh in on it. However, I would encourage other people to pick it up because, again, the task ownership just means that you're responsible for getting it done. Even if you talk to somebody who's an expert, you pair program with them, you shadow them, it doesn't mean that you have to know 100% how to do it. Because otherwise, what I found where people assign tasks all the time is you have some people that are very busy or very busy at certain times, and some people that have nothing to do because all the tasks are taken. So you're kind of taking away your team's opportunity to grow, to avoid single point of failure, and to really challenge themselves. Like, I would think of it more that way, is you're taking away your team's opportunity to learn by pre-assigning the tasks, because you're automatically assuming who is going to do that task right off the bat, when maybe somebody else could do it, they just don't know it. Or maybe they can't do it this time, but they can do it next time. Yes.
So I just want to add one thing on the co-location thing. I work for Red Hat, and we are geographically distributed across the globe.
Yep.
And I find that even though we are not at the same location, we are very effective given, on Slack or different kinds of tools we use. But I come from a very traditional company where everyone was co-located and nothing got done, and it was a lot of pressure.
No, I 100% agree. So this wasn't any kind of bid for non-colo or for like that we have to be co-located, because there are certain examples where people really make it work effectively. I just know that we've had good success, putting people together, but it's definitely not 100% at all. And there's lots of good teams. And there's actually, I know for certain, there's a couple of presentations at Southern Fried Agile with Kim that covers good ways to bring teams together who are distributed. So this is not a pitch for no distributed teams. This is
like in case of Red Hat or many tech companies, you have a lot of acquisitions, and it's not even realistic, but you want to get the best talent when you're working on a project rather than sticking with co-location, because when you have the right person in the team, it will get done no matter what.
Very true. Very true. Thank you.
I have we read an article recently about that might help with people if your teams aren't willing to try new things. And there was an experiment performed by a pretty high functioning XP team. And so XP, everybody pairs. And what this team experimented with was changing their pairs up like all the time. Like 90 minutes was how long pair teams would stay together. And it turned out, they varied the different times, but it turned out the best time was 90 minutes for the pair teams to start to pair together. And for those teams, the other part of the experiment, they were most effective on taking tasks that they didn't really have done before. Because there's a thing called the beginner mind. And if a person has capability, even though they've never really done something before, the first time they're doing it, they're sort of going to try it in a different way maybe, and then often that works out to be a great way to do it. And so it was very interesting that it doesn't necessarily mean just because somebody seems like the expert, they might not do it the best way every single time. So it's another reason to try out new things.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll leave you at this point unless somebody else has more questions. I do find if you assure the team that we're not locked into this, we don't have to do something for, ever and ever. We're just trying it and we can always change it. It seems to make people a little more flexible to at least try it because they know they can always change it or change it back. Anything else? Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys staying.
Before you all leave, I have one last wrap up. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And thank you all for sticking around to the end of the day. This is the end. We have 1 hour left-ish for networking. If you start making your way over to the Growler USA after 4, there might be somebody there waiting to give you a ticket so you can have a free beer. So please feel free to do that. But take the next half hour or so to network, to talk about and digest some of these great ideas and also some of these very interesting questions. I'm sure that lots of people have lots of experience to share. So thank you all again for coming to Red Hat Agile Day.